Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching or listening this show. Welcome to the Management OS show. Today I'm joined by my friend Vijay Rajendran. Been super excited about this one because he's an experienced entrepreneur, he's an investor, and he's also the author of this book that I'm holding in my hand called The Funding Framework. So Vijay knows a thing or two about capital. He's been helping founders navigate the complex landscape of startups and venture capital for quite some time now. And really, the main thing is helping companies go from idea, which all entrepreneurs and leaders start with an exit, which is what a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders would like. Eventually, we'd like to enjoy our time. So his latest book really talks a lot about and distills proven strategies for planning, pitching, securing investment, how you get practical finance knowledge, with stories from the trenches to attract that. So in this episode, we won't be able to cover the whole book, of course, but I'll put notes in the show notes for people to buy it, whether in North America. But we're going to talk about a lot of different things and common things to avoid and how to build relationships and really, for all intents and purposes, how to make your dream come true. So welcome. I appreciate you spending your time with us today.
My pleasure, Davde. Thank you for that very generous intro.
Yeah, no, for sure. And super excited. So, sometimes we start the podcast a little bit with sort of origin, right? So, what inspired you to write the funding framework? I don't know if there was a moment in your career where you said, oh, I got to do this. And because, leadership and entrepreneurship can be a little messy, right? Or you're trying to figure things out. And so you've obviously have something that you saw and you said, I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah, I'd always grown up with such a love and appreciation for books, but I, thought one day I will have something to offer in a book myself, and I think that really struck me when I was leading the portfolio value group at a large global venture capital firm, and there I found myself helping founders with fundraising, particularly in the early stages of their journey and their business, when things were, kind of disparate and coming together, and the business itself was still in an early formative stage. And telling a story was really, really hard. And it wasn't just telling a story, it was also the fact that they needed to figure out who their investors should be, not who were the famous investors of the day or talked about in the news. And so I realized, there's something about what these founders need to do, and that is they need to learn this skill of fundraising. Because I could see in a short time that people could learn this just like they were learning other new skills as they were becoming entrepreneurs. And that it could be selling. Maybe they'd never sold before, or hiring and managing people. Maybe they'd never had that responsibility. These are all learned skills. Why is fundraising a learned skill? Why does it have to be something we assume that people who graduated from a certain accelerator or a certain business school or engineering college, get to do, but others don't? In fact, it's not that at all. It's just that people can learn this, and so that was the impetus for me to capture that in it was a short but pithy book to explain that this is a framework and something you can take on.
That's great. And you said something earlier around like capital and so I say the easiest thing to make in the world, maybe there might be some controversy around it, but the easiest thing to make in the world is money. The only problem is you need money, right? So capital makes capital. And so
Yeah,
whether you're in a startup and you have a great idea, and if you have a great idea that secures capital, I believe you're more likely to succeed. Not everything succeeds, but you're more likely because if you're able to translate, like you talk about the storytelling piece, you're able to translate, okay, this is how it might be relevant and translate into value into the market. Also, alternatively, in terms of funding, there's obviously there's the startup phase, but then companies get funding throughout potentially
that's
throughout their
right.
entire
Yeah.
life. So the skill of capital acquisition, starts at startup, but there's, multiple all the way to IPO, right? So there's a
Yeah,
lot of
that's right.
stages.
Yeah, companies need more capital at different stages in order to invest in their future growth. And so there are now companies that will raise their not just their pre-seed and seed round and Series A, but all the way to like Series F, Series E, and then are common these days as companies stay private longer, even when
Mhm.
they reach hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue sometimes.
Yeah, that's true too. That seems to be a trend that my observation, a sample of one. So I'm not sure if you see this, but I
Mhm.
do know factually, Fortune 500 tenure is declining.
That's
But to
right.
what you just said, companies are staying private longer, and there's more wealth if you look at Roland Frazier and Ryan Dice and Alex Hormozy and Cody Sanchez. There's like these
Yeah.
private family offices springing up all over the place, and they're
Yeah.
bringing capital and systems. And I think this essence of, like you said, the money staying
Mhm.
private longer because you don't have a Wall Street to bang your head on. You can take 6 months to get the return instead of 12 weeks, right?
Yeah. When I was a
So,
college student and the dot com bubble was growing, you could go public as a company with $50 million of revenue, right? And
mhm.
so today, $50 million of revenue is considered, maybe a growth stage company, right? Like it's probably not a Series A business but probably Series B or C business, and that's nice, but it's nowhere near what you need to be to go public, which would be in the few hundreds of millions of dollars. So I mean, those are some of the things where, yes, companies with sometimes very little revenues were going public back then. But if you went public with $50 million, that was considered great. And so I think the scale and size that's expected to go public has changed. And yes, you're absolutely right. The life that a company might spend in the Standard and Poor's 500 is less and less. Used to be, close to 20 years. Now it's about 13. I'm sure it'll soon be in about 10 years
Mhm.
because companies that are that are maybe languishing in the public markets might be taken private. Companies that are new will go private, but at a much later bar. So we'll see companies stay private longer. At the same time, we're seeing companies being taken private as we see every day in the news and with the growth of buyouts and private equity.
Yeah, I think I think one of the most, there's lots of important skills in business, but I fully align with you around the ability to get funding is critical. Because I think if you can combine that with strategic agility and adaptability, you kind of always have to be scanning, right? So I believe you got to be ready and scan. And I think the pace of the game, so let's look at, sports. Um, the players are bigger, the speed is faster. Hockey, football, basketball. If you look at the game today versus the game 30 years ago, it has changed in the vast majority of sports. And so business is no different. And so I think what makes you succeed is you have a good strategy and you capitalize behind that strategy. And you kind of have to have those two pillars of, I got to always be scanning, and you got to be able to identify the need, whether you're pre or post seed and whatnot.
Mhm.
And you got to be able to say, well, I need to get the money quickly because the game is moving so much faster. You can't take 5 years to raise anymore. You might be gone, like the opportunity will have passed. Someone else will grab it. And who knows how AI will change this whole world. That is a whole other topic unto itself. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think strategy is super important. There are, people who are good at one thing and they will, sort of disrespect the other. But I think strategy and execution like matter. And it's like great strategy with no execution is useless. And poor strategy and like great execution will get you nowhere. So
Yeah.
like but like it's really, really important to be good at both, frankly. And capital is an ingredient. It's an important enabler that I talk about in the funding framework because the type of business you're in determines what kind of capital you have. Of all the businesses out there in the world, like only 1% probably should get venture capital. But that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you can't benefit from working capital from other types of equity or debt that would support your business at some point as it's trying to grow in order for you to reach your goals.
Yeah. You're right. I think depending where, if you can get the discipline to attract venture capital, even if you quote unquote don't deserve it,
Yeah,
you'll be able to get the capital that you need. And so to your point,
great
it's
point.